The lobby gleamed under fluorescent lights, all glass and polish. Iris stood before the display board, her sneakers squeaking against marble as she tilted her head at the massive architectural rendering mounted on the wall. Community Center Project. Bold letters beneath a design so elegant it stopped people mid-stride. Designer, Derek Hastings, Senior Architect. But Iris's eyes locked onto the corner. Bottom right, a signature in clean architectural lettering. OF, 2018. Her chest tightened. She knew those initials, knew the slant of that F, the way the loop closed like her father always did when he sketched at their kitchen table late at night. "That's Dad's signature," she whispered, though no one was listening. Until the click of heels stopped behind her. Sharp, deliberate. The CEO's voice cut through the quiet. "Little girl, what did you just say?" Iris turned, clutching her backpack straps, and met eyes that could fire executives without flinching. She pointed at the initials beneath Derek Hastings' name. "Ma'am, that's my dad's signature." The words hung in the air like a lit match dropped in gasoline. Because the name-taking credit wasn't Owen Fletcher, the janitor who mopped these floors every night. And what this 9-year-old was about to uncover would shake the foundation of Ashworth Enterprises more than any architectural flaw ever could. 6 years earlier, Owen Fletcher had signed his last professional drawing. Not with defeat, with resignation. The kind that settles into your bones when fighting back costs more than surrendering. His wife Rachel lay in a hospital bed 3 floors up from his architecture firm, cancer eating through her like acid through paper. His supervisor stood over his desk, red pen slashing through calculations Owen knew were correct. "This is your error, Fletcher. Own it, or we'll make sure no firm in Pennsylvania hires you again." Owen had looked at the numbers, looked at the ceiling, knowing Rachel was up there wondering why he hadn't visited during lunch. He'd signed the admission of fault, walked out, never went back. Now he wore a grey uniform with maintenance stitched across the pocket, and his daughter carried his old sketchbook like a Bible. Iris had been 3 when Rachel died, old enough to remember her mother's laugh. Too young to understand why Daddy stopped drawing the houses they'd never build. But she'd found his old portfolio last year, tucked behind winter coats in the hall closet. Page after page of designs, each one marked in the bottom right corner, OF, followed by a year. Some dated back to when Owen still believed architecture was about vision. Before he learned it was about politics. "Why'd you stop, Dad?" she'd asked that night, her finger tracing the signature on a hospital renovation design. 1998, the year he'd met Rachel at a job site. She'd been the landscape architect. He'd been the structural engineer who couldn't stop staring at how she made green spaces feel like breathing rooms. "Life got complicated, sweetheart," he'd said, which was true but incomplete. The complete version involved blame he didn't earn, a reputation he couldn't rebuild, and a choice to be present for his daughter instead of absent chasing vindication. "But you're so good at it." Iris had held up a rendering of a library, all light and angles. His signature in the corner, proud and permanent. "I am good at it," Owen had agreed. "But being good at something doesn't mean you get to keep doing it." Except he never really stopped. Late nights after Iris fell asleep, Owen would open his laptop and design. Not for clients, not for credit, just to prove to himself his hands still remembered how to create something beautiful. He saved the files in a folder on the company shared drive, buried under maintenance schedules and supply orders. Personal practice, he told himself. Digital sketches no one would ever see. He was wrong about that last part. 3 months ago, Derek Hastings had been hunting through the shared drive for reference files when he'd stumbled into Owen's folder. At first, he'd thought it was mislabeled. Janitors didn't produce work like this. Clean lines, efficient use of space, designs that somehow felt both modern and timeless. Derek had opened file after file, his coffee going cold as he scrolled. The community centre concept stopped him cold. It was perfect. Better than anything Derek had produced in 8 years of kissing up to executives and playing it safe. And there, in the bottom right corner of the digital rendering, 2 letters and a year. OF, 2018. Derek had looked at his own deadline. 3 days to present something bold for the town contract, something that would prove he deserved the Senior Architect title he'd been clinging to by his fingernails. He'd told himself Owen would never know. The man mopped floors for a living. Clearly, he'd abandoned architecture for a reason. Derek downloaded the file, spent 2 days making minor adjustments, moving a window here, adjusting a roofline there, and presented it as his own. He'd even left the OF signature, thinking it was some kind of file notation. Original format, maybe. Or optimized foundation. It didn't matter. No one looked at corners. Except Iris looked at corners. She'd grown up watching her father sketch on napkins during dinner, signing each silly drawing the same way. OF, bottom right, always. The angle of that F was as familiar to her as her own name. Which is why, standing in the lobby after school while her father finished his shift on the 8th floor, she'd frozen when she saw those initials on a design crediting someone else. Her 9-year-old brain didn't immediately jump to theft. It jumped to confusion. Maybe Dad did this for Mr. Hastings? Maybe this is how architecture works. But then she remembered the conversation last week. Owen had been sketching at the kitchen table, working on something he called just for fun. Iris had asked if he'd ever show his designs to his boss. "They don't know I draw, sweetheart. And that's okay. Some things are just for us." The sadness in his voice had been quiet. The kind adults think kids don't notice. But Iris noticed everything about her father. The way he stood straighter when he talked about buildings. The way his hands moved differently when he held a pencil versus a mop. The way he'd light up explaining load-bearing walls and natural light flow. Then dim when he remembered he was supposed to be the guy who cleaned up after people who got paid to have those conversations. So when Vivian Ashworth, the woman whose office her father cleaned every night, whose coffee cups he emptied, whose empire he kept spotless, asked what she'd just said, Iris didn't hesitate. She pointed at the signature. "Ma'am, that's my dad's signature. Owen Fletcher. He works here. He cleans the floors." Her voice didn't waver. 9 years old, and she had more certainty than most adults carried in a lifetime. "That's his OF. I know because he signs everything that way. Even my birthday cards." Vivian Ashworth had not become CEO of a mid-sized architecture firm by ignoring details that didn't add up. She'd inherited the position from her father 5 years ago and spent every day since trying to run it better than he had, which meant actually caring about things like integrity and proper attribution. She looked at the rendering, looked at the signature, looked at this child with untied shoelaces and complete conviction. "Come with me," Vivian said, and her tone left no room for argument. The elevator ride to the 12th floor was silent, except for the mechanical hum and Iris's breathing. The girl kept her eyes on the floor numbers lighting up. 7, 8, 9. Vivian watched her in the polished metal reflection. She's not scared, Vivian realized. She's sure. That kind of certainty came from seeing something so many times you'd recognize it in your sleep. Vivian knew that feeling. She'd spent her childhood learning to spot her father's shortcuts, his corner cutting, his tendency to take credit for his partner's work. She'd promised herself she'd never run a company that way. If this child was right, if someone on her staff had stolen work from a janitor, heads would roll. Vivian's office smelled like leather and old paper, Iris sat in a chair too big for her, backpack on her lap like a shield. "Show me," Vivian said, not unkindly. Iris pulled out her phone, a hand-me-down model with a cracked screen, and opened her photos. Hundreds of images, sketches on napkins, drawings on notebook paper, architectural renderings printed and taped to their refrigerator. Every single one signed the same way. OF with that distinctive F. The loop closed at a precise angle, consistent across years of work. Vivian pulled up the community center file on her computer, zoomed in on the corner signature. The match was undeniable. Same slant, same loop closure, same spacing between the letters. "When did your father draw this?" Vivian asked, pulling up the file properties. "Created March 12th, modified March 15th. "I don't know exactly," Iris said, "but he draws a lot at night, after I go to bed. I hear him in the kitchen sometimes." She scrolled to a photo dated March 10th, a work-in-progress sketch on graph paper. The community center, rougher but unmistakably the same design. Owen's coffee mug in the corner of the frame, the one Iris had made him in second-grade art class. Vivian sat back in her chair. Her jaw was tight. She'd fired people for far less than this, but something about the situation felt larger than a simple termination. A janitor who could design like this didn't end up mopping floors by accident. There was a story here, one she suspected involved the kind of injustice she'd spent her career trying to root out. "Does your father know you're here?" Vivian asked. Iris shook her head. "He's working. Floor 8. He doesn't finish until 6. "Call him," Vivian said, handing Iris the desk phone. "Tell him to come to my office. Now!" Iris's hands shook slightly as she dialed her father's work cell. It rang 4 times before Owen answered, slightly out of breath. "Iris? What's wrong? Are you okay?" The panic in his voice was immediate, paternal. "I'm fine, Dad. I'm in Miss Ashworth's office. She wants to see you." The line went quiet for 3 long seconds. "Why are you in the CEO's office?" Owen's voice had changed. Careful now. Wary. "Just come, Dad. It's important. You're not in trouble." But Owen Fletcher had learned that people in power always meant trouble, no matter what they promised. He arrived 7 minutes later, still wearing his maintenance uniform, a sheen of sweat on his forehead from taking the stairs because he didn't trust waiting for the elevator when his daughter was in the CEO's office. "Iris, what's going on?" He barely glanced at Vivian, his entire focus on his child. "I'm fine, Dad. But look." Iris turned her phone toward him, showing one of his sketches beside the community center rendering on Vivian's screen. "Someone used your design. With your signature." Owen looked at the screen. His face went through a series of expressions: confusion, recognition, resignation. Not anger. That's what struck Vivian. Most people would have been furious. Owen Fletcher just looked tired. "Mr. Fletcher," Vivian said, her voice level but firm. "Did you create this design?" Owen nodded slowly. "I did. March. Late one night. It was just practice. I never submitted it for anything." His eyes flicked to Derek's name on the display. "I didn't think anyone would see it." "But someone did see it." Vivian pulled up the file history. "Derek Hastings accessed your folder on March 13th, downloaded this file, modified it minimally, and presented it as his own work 2 days later." She turned the monitor so Owen could see the metadata trail. "He won the community center contract with your design. He's been taking credit for 3 months. Owen's jaw clenched. The only sign he was angry. "I see." "That's it?" Vivian leaned forward. "You see, Mr. Fletcher, this is theft. Intellectual property theft. Your work. Your signature. He didn't even bother removing it." Owen glanced at Iris, who was watching him with those eyes that missed nothing. "What do you want me to say? I'm a janitor. He's a senior architect. Who's going to believe me?" The defeat in his voice wasn't fresh. It was old, worn in, the kind that came from having learned this lesson before. "I believe you," Vivian said flatly. "And tomorrow morning, everyone else will too." She picked up her phone. "Derek Hastings, my office. First thing tomorrow, 8 a.m. Don't be late." She hung up before he could respond. Then she looked at Owen. Really looked at him. Past the uniform, past the resignation. "Mr. Fletcher, how did an architect talented enough to design that building end up cleaning floors?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Owen was quiet for a long moment. Iris reached over and took his hand. "6 years ago, I worked for Morrison & Associates. Good firm. I was junior architect, working my way up." Owen's voice was steady, but distant, like he was reciting someone else's story. "There was a calculation error on a project. Structural load. Someone miscalculated, and it could have been catastrophic if it hadn't been caught." He paused. "My supervisor made the error, but when the firm faced liability, he blamed me. Said I'd signed off on his numbers, gave them documents with my forged signature." Vivian's eyes narrowed. "Did you fight it?" "I was going to." Owen's hand tightened around Iris's. "But that same week, my wife Rachel got her diagnosis. Stage 4 cancer. Aggressive. The doctors said months, maybe a year if we were lucky." His voice cracked slightly. "So I had a choice. Spend what time she had left fighting to clear my name, burning through our savings on lawyers and depositions, or let it go and be with her, be with our daughter." He looked at Iris. "I chose them. I'd choose them again." The office was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. Vivian had seen a lot in her years running this company. Greed, ambition, cowardice. But she'd rarely seen someone choose love over legacy quite this completely. "Rachel passed 4 years ago," Owen continued. "By then, my reputation was destroyed. No firm would touch me. I needed work that paid enough to keep Iris fed and housed. Maintenance paid the bills, had health insurance, regular hours so I could be home for dinner." He shrugged. "I never stopped being an architect in here." He tapped his temple. "I just stopped being one professionally." "You kept designing," Vivian said, gesturing at the screen. "In secret, on the company drive." Owen had the grace to look embarrassed. "I know I shouldn't have used company storage. It was stupid. I just needed to keep my skills sharp. Prove to myself I could still do it. The files were buried. I didn't think anyone would find them." He laughed bitterly. "Guess I was wrong." Vivian stood and walked to her window. 12 floors down, the city sprawled out in the late afternoon light. She'd inherited this company from a father who'd built it on cutting corners and taking credit. She'd spent 5 years trying to wash that stain away. And now, in her own building, under her own leadership, one of her senior architects had stolen work from a janitor who should have been designing landmarks. The irony was almost poetic. "Mr. Fletcher," she said without turning around. "Tomorrow morning at 9, we're holding an emergency company meeting, all staff. I want you there." Owen frowned. "Ma'am, I don't think that's not a request." Vivian turned to face him. "Tomorrow morning, everyone in this building is going to learn the truth. About Derek. About you. About this company's commitment to integrity." She crossed her arms. "And then we're going to discuss your new position." Owen blinked. "My new position? Ms. Ashworth, I'm not asking for anything. I don't care what you're asking for." Vivian's voice was sharp, but not unkind. "I care about what's right. A man with your talent cleaning toilets is a waste. A thief taking credit for your work is an insult. Both of those things end tomorrow. Iris squeezed her father's hand. Dad, let her help. Owen looked at his daughter. 9 years old, and somehow wiser than he'd ever managed to be. He'd spent 6 years teaching her that honesty mattered more than success, that integrity was worth more than recognition, and now she was asking him to let someone fight for him, to let someone give him back what had been taken. Okay, he said quietly. Okay. That night, Owen couldn't sleep. He sat at the kitchen table, laptop open, staring at the folder of designs he'd created in secret. Buildings that would never be built, ideas that would never leave this drive. Or so he'd thought. Iris shuffled out in her pajamas around midnight, rubbing her eyes. Can't sleep either? Owen closed the laptop. Sorry, sweetheart. Didn't mean to wake you. She climbed into his lap like she used to when she was smaller, getting too big for it now, but Owen would never tell her that. What's going to happen tomorrow, Dad? I don't know, Owen admitted. Ms. Ashworth says she's going to tell everyone the truth, about Derek stealing my design. He ran a hand through his hair. I just keep thinking about your mom, about the choice I made 6 years ago, wondering if I gave up too easy. Iris looked up at him. Mom wouldn't think you gave up. She'd think you showed up. For me. Owen's throat tightened. You sound like her sometimes. You know that? Iris smiled. Good. Someone has to keep you from being too hard on yourself. At 7:45 the next morning, the Ashworth Enterprises conference room was packed. Word had spread fast about the emergency meeting. Rumors flew. Someone was getting fired. Someone was getting promoted. The company was being sold. No one had guessed the truth. Derek Hastings sat near the front, confident and composed in his tailored suit. He'd been up since 5, preparing remarks in case this was about the community center project. Maybe they were expanding it. Maybe he was getting a raise. Owen stood in the back in his maintenance uniform, Iris beside him in her school clothes. She'd insisted on coming before school. I started this, she'd said. I'm going to see it through. Vivian had agreed without hesitation. At precisely 9 o'clock, Vivian Ashworth walked to the front of the room. The conversations died instantly. Thank you all for coming on short notice, she began, her voice carrying easily. I called this meeting because I discovered something yesterday that requires immediate company-wide attention. A violation of the most fundamental principle this company was built on, or should have been built on: integrity. The room was silent. Vivian pulled up the community center rendering on the large screen. Most of you know this design. Derek Hastings presented it 3 months ago. We won the contract. Construction begins next month. It's been praised by the City Council as innovative and thoughtful. She paused. Derek did not design this building. The room erupted. Vivian held up her hand for silence. The actual designer is Owen Fletcher. Some of you know him as the night maintenance supervisor who cleans this building. She gestured to the back. Owen, please come forward. Owen's feet felt like lead. Every eye in the room turned to him. Whispers started immediately. The janitor? That's impossible. This has to be a joke. Iris gave him a small push. Go, Dad. He walked to the front, hyper-aware of his uniform, his worn shoes, the fact that most of these people had never looked at him directly. Vivian pulled up 2 images side by side. Derek's presentation, and a photo of Owen's original sketch, complete with the distinctive OF signature in the corner. On March 12th, Owen created this design and saved it to his personal folder on the company drive. On March 13th, Derek Hastings accessed that folder, downloaded the file, and modified it minimally. On March 15th, he presented it as his own work. Vivian's voice was ice. The metadata proves this. The original files prove this. And most damningly, Derek left Owen's signature in the final design. OF 2018, Owen Fletcher. She zoomed in on the corner. The initials were sharp and clear. Did anyone on the review committee notice that signature? Did anyone ask Derek what OF stood for? Derek had gone pale. He stood up. Ms. Ashworth, this is absurd. I can explain. Sit down, Mr. Hastings. Vivian's tone could have frozen fire. You'll get your chance to explain. To the police. Because this isn't just unethical. It's illegal. Theft of intellectual property. She turned to the room. Owen Fletcher is an architect. Carnegie Mellon, class of 2009. He worked for Morrison and Associates before personal circumstances led him to this position. He never stopped designing. He's created dozens of exceptional buildings in his spare time, all of them saved in a folder Derek decided to plunder. Vivian pulled up more of Owen's designs. A library, a school, a medical clinic. Each one signed OF, each one showing the kind of vision that couldn't be faked. This is the level of talent we've had cleaning our bathrooms while mediocrity gets promoted. She looked directly at Derek, because men like Derek Hastings are very good at taking credit, and men like Owen Fletcher are very good at staying quiet. She turned to Owen. I think it's time you stopped being quiet. Owen stood there, dozens of faces staring at him. Some shocked, some skeptical. A few looked angry on his behalf. He cleared his throat. I didn't come forward because I didn't think it mattered. He started, his voice rough. I'm nobody. Just the guy who empties your trash. Who cares if I can design? Who cares if someone took my work? He looked at Iris, standing in the back. But my daughter cared. She saw that signature and knew it was mine. She didn't think about titles or positions. She just knew what was right. 6 years ago, I let someone destroy my career because fighting back would have cost me time with my dying wife. Owen continued. I chose love over justice. I don't regret that. But I did let myself believe that staying silent was the same as staying safe. That if I just kept my head down, did my job, didn't make waves, everything would be okay. He paused. But silence doesn't protect you from people like Derek. It just makes it easier for them to steal from you. The room was absolutely still. Owen looked at Derek, who couldn't meet his eyes. I don't know why you did it. Maybe you were desperate. Maybe you thought I'd never notice. Maybe you thought a janitor's work didn't count as real work. His voice hardened. But you saw that signature. You knew what OF meant, even if you pretended you didn't. And you left it there because deep down, you knew removing it would make the theft complete. You wanted just enough plausible deniability to sleep at night. Derek stood abruptly. I'm not going to stand here and be accused, then leave. Vivian's voice cut across his. Security is waiting outside to escort you from the building. You're terminated effective immediately. Legal will be in touch about restitution and potential criminal charges. 2 security guards appeared in the doorway. Derek looked around the room, searching for allies. He found none. As they led him out, he stopped next to Owen. You should have submitted it properly, he muttered. Then maybe you would have stolen something else. Owen's voice was quiet but firm. This isn't about what I should have done. It's about what you chose to do. After Derek was gone, Vivian addressed the room again. Let this be clear to everyone here. Talent isn't determined by your title. Integrity isn't optional. And if anyone in this company ever discovers that credit has been misattributed, you report it immediately. To me. To HR. To anyone who will listen. She looked at Owen. Effective immediately, Owen Fletcher is our new lead architect. He will oversee the community center project, his project, and any future designs bearing his signature will be properly attributed. The room broke into applause. Not universal. Some people still looked skeptical, but enough that Owen felt his chest tighten. Iris was beaming from the back row, tears streaming down her face. Vivian handed Owen a folder. Your contract, fair salary, benefits, and one non-negotiable condition. Owen opened it. What condition? You work 8 to 5. No evenings, no weekends unless absolutely necessary. Vivian's expression softened slightly. Your daughter already lost a mother. She's not losing her father to this job, too. The next few weeks were a blur. Owen moved into an office on the 7th floor with a drafting table and a window that looked out over the city. Iris visited after school, doing homework in the corner while he worked. The other architects were wary at first. A janitor turned lead architect was an adjustment. But Owen's work spoke for itself. He was patient with junior staff, generous with credit, and had a gift for solving problems that stumped others. His OF signature started appearing on new projects, each one bearing the same distinctive loop on the F. Vivian watched the transformation with something close to satisfaction. She'd spent 5 years trying to build a company her father would never have recognized, one that valued people over profit, integrity over innovation at any cost. Owen Fletcher was proof that model could work. But there was more to it than that. Late one evening, Vivian found herself in Owen's office. He was there past 5 for once, finishing a detail on a school renovation. You're breaking your own rule, she observed from the doorway. Owen looked up, startled. Ms. Ashworth, sorry, I just wanted to finish this section. Iris is at a friend's house for dinner, and It's fine. Vivian stepped inside. I wanted to talk to you anyway. She sat in the chair across from his desk. About why I did this. Why I pushed so hard to clear your name. Owen set down his pencil. Because it was the right thing to do? Partly. Vivian looked out his window at the darkening sky. But also because I have a daughter, Amy. She's 32 now. I didn't know you had children. Owen said carefully. Vivian's smile was sad. Most people don't. She doesn't speak to me. Hasn't in 8 years. She folded her hands in her lap. I made different choices than you did, Owen. When my father was dying, when Amy was young, when I had to choose between being present and being successful, I chose success every time. The admission hung heavy in the air. I missed her school plays, her graduation, her wedding. I missed everything that mattered because I was too busy building an empire I thought she'd be proud of. Owen didn't know what to say. Vivian continued. When Iris walked into my office and fought for you, I saw what I lost. A child who believes in their parent, who knows them well enough to recognize their signature in a corner of a blueprint, who thinks their father is worth defending. She met Owen's eyes. I wanted to give you what I threw away. The chance to be the parent who shows up, who's there, who chooses their child over their career without regret. I'm sorry about your daughter, Owen said quietly. Have you tried reaching out? For years. She doesn't respond. Vivian stood. But watching you with Iris, seeing how she looks at you, it gives me hope that maybe it's not completely too late. Maybe there's still time to show Amy I've learned what matters. She moved toward the door, then paused. Your signature, Owen. That OF in the corner of every building. Do you know what I see when I look at it? What? A promise. That the person who built this stood behind their work, was present for every decision, didn't cut corners or steal credit. She smiled slightly. It's the kind of signature a company should have, a person should have. That's why I fought for yours. 6 months after the community meeting, the Fletcher Community Center held its grand opening. The building was everything Owen had envisioned. Light-filled spaces, efficient design, accessibility built into every corner. And there, on a bronze plaque by the entrance, was the inscription, Designed by Owen Fletcher, Lead Architect Ashworth Enterprises, OF, 2018. Iris stood next to her father as the mayor cut the ribbon. Local news cameras captured the moment. The reporter interviewed Owen afterward, asking about his journey from maintenance worker to lead architect. "I never stopped being an architect," Owen said simply. "I just stopped getting paid for it. But my daughter reminded me that your signature, your real signature, the mark you leave on the world, isn't about titles. It's about showing up honestly every day, building things that matter, and making sure the people who depend on you know you'll be there." He pulled Iris close. "She's my best design. Everything else is just buildings." That evening, Vivian sat in her small apartment. She'd downsized from the penthouse a month ago, no longer needing to prove anything with square footage, and composed an email to her daughter. She'd written dozens of drafts over the years, deleted them all. But tonight, she pressed send. "Amy, I know I have no right to ask for your time. I made choices that hurt you, and I can't undo them. But I'm learning, slowly, what really matters. I met a man who chose his daughter over his career, and I saw what I gave up. If you're ever willing to talk, I'll be here. No agenda, no excuses, just a mother who finally understands what she lost. Love, Mom." 3 weeks later, Vivian's phone rang with an unknown number. She almost didn't answer. "Hello? Mom?" The voice was hesitant. Female, familiar in a way that made Vivian's breath catch. "It's Amy. I got your email." Vivian sat down hard in her desk chair. "Amy, I didn't think you'd call." "I almost didn't." A pause. "But something in your message felt different, like you finally got it." Another pause. "I'm not ready to forgive everything, but maybe we could try coffee. Just talk, see if there's anything left to rebuild." Vivian closed her eyes, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I would love that any time. Any place, I'll be there." "Next Saturday, 2 p.m., the coffee shop on Maple Street." Amy's voice was still guarded but not hostile. "Don't be late." "I won't be." Vivian gripped the phone. "Amy, thank you for giving me a chance." "Thank a 9-year-old girl and her janitor father," Amy said. "Your email mentioned them. They sound like they taught you something you should have learned 30 years ago." She hung up before Vivian could respond. The following Saturday, Vivian arrived at the coffee shop 20 minutes early. She ordered tea she didn't drink and watched the door like a soldier on watch. At precisely 2 p.m., a woman walked in. Dark hair, her father's nose, Vivian's eyes. Amy Fletcher Brennan was 32 and beautiful, and looking at Vivian with an expression somewhere between hope and armor. They sat. They talked. It wasn't easy. Amy had years of hurt to voice. Vivian had decades of apologies to offer. But they stayed for 3 hours, and when they left, they had plans to meet again in 2 weeks. "It's not forgiveness," Amy said as they stood on the sidewalk. "Not yet. Maybe not ever." "I know." Vivian's voice was steady. "But it's a start. That's more than I deserve." Amy studied her mother. "You really have changed, haven't you?" "I'm trying to." Vivian met her daughter's eyes. "A wise man once told me that your signature isn't your name. It's your promise to show up honestly. I spent 55 years signing my name to things that didn't matter. I'd like to spend whatever time I have left signing it to things that do." 2 years later, Owen Fletcher stood in his office, reviewing plans for a new children's hospital, when Iris burst in after school. She was 11 now, taller, and somehow both more confident and more thoughtful. "Dad, guess what?" "What, sweetheart?" He looked up from the blueprints. "I got accepted to the summer architecture camp at Carnegie Mellon." She waved the acceptance letter. "They only take 20 kids from the whole state." Owen came around the desk and swept her into a hug. That's incredible. I'm so proud of you. I want to be an architect like you, Iris said, her voice muffled against his shoulder. But not exactly like you. Owen pulled back to look at her. What do you mean? I want to design buildings that help people, like you do, but I also want to sign my name to them. She grinned. I've been practicing. Want to see? She pulled out her sketchbook, and there, in the corner of a very competent drawing of a library, were the initials IF, with the loop of the F closing at a slightly different angle than Owen's. Her own signature, her own promise. It's perfect, Owen said, his throat tight. Your mum would have loved this. I know. Iris looked at the sketch. I think about her sometimes when I draw, about how she wanted you to keep designing, how she knew it was part of who you are. She looked up at him. Do you think she'd be proud of both of us? Sweetheart, I think she's been proud since the day you walked into the CEO's office and said, Mom, that's my dad's signature. Owen smiled. That took more courage than anything I've ever designed. On a Friday evening in late spring, Ashworth Enterprises held its annual gala. Black tie, donors and clients, speeches about vision and innovation. Owen wore a suit that Vivian had insisted the company pay for. You're lead architect, Owen. You can't show up in a rental. And felt only moderately uncomfortable. Iris was there too, in a dress she'd picked herself, acting as Owen's +1 because he'd never dated after Rachel and wasn't about to start now. Vivian took the stage to present the Architect of the Year award, a company tradition her father had started decades ago. This year's recipient exemplifies everything we value at Ashworth Enterprises, Vivian began. Integrity, creativity, commitment to excellence, and most importantly, the understanding that the buildings we design are for people, not for glory. She smiled. Owen Fletcher, would you please come up here? The room applauded as Owen made his way to the stage, Iris beaming from their table. Vivian handed him a glass plaque with his name engraved. Your signature is on 14 projects now, she said quietly, just for him. And every single one makes this city better. That's what legacy looks like. Owen looked out at the crowd, at colleagues who'd become friends, at Iris, who was taking pictures on her phone, at Vivian, who'd fought for him when he'd stopped fighting for himself. 3 years ago, I thought my signature didn't matter anymore, he said into the microphone. I thought being a good father meant giving up being a good architect, that I had to choose. He held up the award. But my daughter taught me that your signature, your real signature, is how you show up in the world, and you can show up in more than one way. I sign my name to buildings now, but more importantly, I sign it to every morning I make Iris breakfast, every school play I attend, every late-night talk when she can't sleep. He found Iris in the crowd. That's the signature that matters. The buildings are just buildings. She's the legacy. The applause was genuine and warm. As Owen left the stage, Vivian whispered, Rachel would be proud. She is, Owen said with certainty. Somewhere she is. That night, after Iris had gone to bed clutching the award, Can I keep it in my room, Dad? Owen sat at his kitchen table with his laptop. He opened his design folder, now official company property but still his. Dozens of projects, hundreds of sketches, all signed OF in the corner. He started a new file, not for a client, just for himself, for practice, for the pure joy of creating something that might never be built. The design took shape slowly. A house by a lake, large windows, a porch facing the water, room for a child to grow. He'd drawn versions of this house 100 times over the years, Rachel's dream house. But this time, something was different. This time, Owen added a second story, a loft space with skylights, an art studio, because Iris would need space to draw her own buildings someday. He worked until past midnight, adjusting angles and optimizing light flow. When he finally signed it in the corner, OF, followed by the current year, he sat back and looked at it, not with sadness for what he'd never built with Rachel, but with hope for what he might still build with Iris. His phone buzzed, a text from Vivian, sent at an hour she probably shouldn't still be awake. Amy's moving back to town, starting a landscape architecture firm. Asked if I want to be her partner. Imagine that. Owen smiled and typed back, "Sounds like a good signature to add to your life." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally. "Thanks for teaching me what that means." Owen looked around his small kitchen, at Iris's drawings on the refrigerator, at his worn laptop and cheaper coffee maker. At the maintenance uniform still hanging by the door, he'd kept it as a reminder of where he'd been. This wasn't the life he'd imagined at 25. It was smaller, quieter, built on loss and reconstruction. But it was his, signed with his name in every corner. Honest work, present fatherhood, buildings that helped people, a daughter who knew exactly how to recognize his signature even when the world tried to hide it. Outside, spring rain began to fall. Owen closed his laptop and went to check on Iris. She was asleep with her sketchbook open, a half-finished drawing of the children's hospital he was designing. In the corner, she'd written in pencil, "IF, Future Architect." Owen pulled the blanket up around her shoulders and kissed her forehead. "Dream big, sweetheart," he whispered, "and never let anyone else sign your name." The next morning was Saturday. No work, no deadlines, just Owen and Iris and the whole day ahead of them. They drove out to the lake where Rachel had wanted to build their house. The land was still empty, still waiting. Iris ran down to the water's edge while Owen stood on the hill, imagining where the porch would go, where the windows would face, where his daughter might someday bring her own children to visit. He pulled out his phone and took a photo of the view. Sent it to Vivian with the caption, "Next project, building it for real this time." Her response came quickly. "Let me know when you're ready. The company will back it. Consider it a long overdue commission." Owen smiled and pocketed his phone. Maybe he would build it. Maybe not. The important thing was that he could. That his signature meant something again. That his daughter knew exactly who he was and what he stood for. That somewhere in the corner of every building he touched, those 2 letters promised. This was made with integrity. This was made with love. This was made by someone who showed up. Iris called from the water's edge, "Dad, come see!" Owen walked down the hill to where she stood. She'd drawn something in the wet sand, a rough outline of a house, simple lines, 1 story, porch facing the water. And there, in the bottom right corner, scratched carefully in the sand, OF plus IF. "Our house," she said proudly. "Someday." Owen knelt down and put his arm around her. "Someday," he agreed. The waves rolled in, slowly erasing the drawing. But the signatures remained just a moment longer, side by side in the sand. A promise, a legacy, a father and daughter building something together, one honest line at a time.